How do we unlock South Africa's domestic gas potential?
Characterize that restriction properly. We have no legal restriction on oil and gas exploration and exploitation in South Africa. The biggest challenge is foreign-funded NGOs that take us to court on every gas and oil project. That is what we should overcome. That's why in the pipeline today, we say we must have a legal system that deals with those disputes in an accelerated pace, as Namibia did. And if we do that, we are having to have a breakthrough, and we're going to deal with those disputes at a speed that is necessary to resolve them. And if we do that, for example, Namibia, north of the Orange Basin, has drilled 10 wells. In South Africa, wanted to drill 3 wells. We ended up in court with a judgment that stops it and all that. We're appealing it. We're going to challenge it to the end, because one of the issues that South Africans broadly must appreciate is to appreciate that they will never breathe fresh air in darkness. They need light and then strive to improve. They must develop and actually never counterpose ecology and economics. Integrate economics and ecology, then you will produce what is called sustainable development. Ecological requirements impose conditions on us to be responsible in developing economic projects, and we accept that. But blocking development will kill environmental capacity for the country.
Do you think it's time to have legislation in Parliament that deals with these issues, that set out the guide, their regulations straight, and rather than let judges have to decide on every exploration permit?
Society has a right to demand higher standards from us as former liberation activists than it was on apartheid. We can't lower our standards to a level of apartheid. Therefore, many of our laws were informed by that reality. And I'm saying, in some of them, we move a little bit to the extreme. What we should be doing is to adapt. That's why I was talking of a tribunal that must deal with environmental disputes. That tribunal must accelerate the processing of those disputes without eliminating them. It allows them to be taken up, deal with them legally, properly, and actually find solution to them. And if we do that, we are going to see development. I have said to my colleagues, but people like Professor Ramkupa say I must put up research information to prove this. I said, if we make a breakthrough on oil and gas, our economic GDP will be around 5 to 8%. And
I even think more.
That is our next growth point.
We are also seeing in 2025, you did you released the gas master plan. What's the status of that?
There's one thing that is important. People don't understand this separation. This separation is very scientific. We are given the primary sectors of the economy. We drive them. Then once you process them up the value chain, they go to electricity and energy. That's why the gas master plan is electricity and energy. We drill, and give them gas. They must transform it into other commodities that come out of gas. Ours is to drill, and drill.
I want to go back to you lifting the moratorium on shale. Are we going to see steps this year or early next year on licenses, on progress being made with actual investments from the private sector?
The court ruled that regulations for the shale gas must be developed by the Ministry of Forestry, Fishery and Environment in South Africa, not ourselves. We accepted that. Ironically, that minister has just released the draft regulations. He said for comment, and I say, cassette them for implementation. Because if you gazette them for implementation, the following day I will lift the moratorium. We'll start drilling the shale gas in the Karoo. We need it for our development. And we're hoping that the process of those regulations will be accelerated and we complete it. And then we can begin to lift the moratorium and begin to see interest in the shale gas in the Karoo, very dry area of our country, but a lot of potential.
What are you doing on regional collaborations when it comes to oil and gas? When you look at Namibia, we just mentioned Mozambique, but also looking at other countries like Angola, that you are sharing expertise, but also different cross-border agreements.
Africa is a unique continent. I always talk to my colleagues in the continent and say to them, one of the issues that will help us as a continent is to work together. Because if we don't work together, we engage in what I describe as race to the bottom, where people offer conditions that are not optimal for every country. We're talking to these countries and we say to them, if Namibia, if Angola works with other countries right to Zambia to open the Lobito corridor, we say, do develop the Lobito corridor, but remember not to emphasize pit to port in terms of your mining approach. Value addition must be important. That Lobito corridor will have value if that is the case. And it depends on our agreement. And therefore, I was talking to the CE this morning and said to her, listen, Africa is a mining continent, but it is strange that it has no ministerial forum for mining. Very strange. It is the most strange things for me. Africa should be having a ministerial level forum where ministers of mining come together, engage on an approach so that we're uniform. If we don't have that, we're going to continue the race to the bottom and we'll have a complaint that describe that without linking it with. Africa is rich in minerals, is endowed, but it is poor. What we are not going to be explaining is that that is an outcome of a continent that is not working together to get optimal benefit out of its endowment.
How do you reclaim that South African mojo, that South African ingenuity that your colleague minister mentioned, to really drive that as Anibal has addressed?
Now, the reduction of our refining capacity was not a choice. Let's first explain that. Engine refinery blew up. They opted not to revive it, but opt for imported processed products. BP and Shell were owning Supref. It was destroyed by a disaster. They opted out of it. So that reduction is not a choice of South Africa. We appreciate that when you don't have sufficient refining capacity, there is a big risk in your security of supply. It is that reason that one of the issues that we've done was to buy Supref from BP and Shell, and we're rebuilding it. Now, it is going to be a state asset. And we're equally anxious about the state of Petro SA, where the 3 plants are not operational. We want them to be reignited. Then that will improve our refining capacity. But we're also putting our eye on the development in the continent. The Dangote refinery in Nigeria is quite a positive add. And we're hoping that the discussion between Angola and Botswana is also a discussion that we are paying attention to, because we don't need refining capacity for South Africa. Africa as a continent needs refining capacity. We have sufficient storage capacity in South Africa that actually help us import processed products. But we know that you can't only depend on processed products. you must refine here to limit the risk. And therefore, that's why we're investing in that area of work as the state.
Minister, final question. Where do you see, a few months ago, you launched SNPC. Where do you see it going? Are we on track with getting them to move faster?
Let me give you a very open and honest answer. SNPC, from where we stand, want to create a South African champion for petroleum. That's what we're doing. They want to invest everything, but it is done with subsidiaries of Central Energy Fund. And therefore, when you build as an NPC, you must all the time go and nudge SAF to appreciate this importance of this vehicle for the industry. Sometimes SAF itself will look into its own balance sheet and move slower than we expect. But our view is that SANPEC is the most appropriate project undertaken by SAF. It is up to us to pull our resources and energy together to make it work. It must compete in the market. It must compete with everybody. It must have a good market share in that it is a petroleum champion for the country. We want to build that. Once we do that, Strategic Fuel Fund, iGas, and PetroSA will disappear, and SANPEC will take them as a merged group in one, and it must be operationalized. That is what keeps us awake at night.
Mr. Mantashe, I hope we don't have more to keep you awake, but we wish you luck. And it's never a dull moment having a conversation with Mr. Mantashe. Thank you so much, and we appreciate it.
We are here at Africa Energy Week in 2025. First day of the event is booming everywhere. A lot of people, many stakeholders from the energy value chain.
We're here to promote the need for investments in a robust downstream sector to truly have energy security for the continent.